This video was brought to you by Brilliant, and the first 200 people to use the link below will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Having failed to take Kyiv, Putin apparently scaled down his objectives in phase 2 of the invasion, with the Russian army almost entirely refocusing on the Donbass region in the east of Ukraine. While Russian forces originally made some slow but steady progress, in recent days the Russian advance has apparently slowed once again, and it looks like phase 2 might have stalled once more. So in this video we're going to be taking yet another look at Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine, how it's all going for Putin, and how it might yet end. As we detailed in previous videos, Putin's forces are almost exclusively focused on the Donbass region in the east of the country. Russian forces have completely withdrawn from Kyiv and Chernihiv oblasts in the north of Ukraine, and are no longer advancing from the south of Kherson. Similarly, Russia has apparently given up on attacking Odessa in the south. According to Odessa's military administration, Russia's warships have moved further from the coast, and as such, an attack in the near future looks unlikely. Russia's prospects in the south probably haven't been helped by the recent sinking of Moskva, which has limited their capacity for amphibious assaults. Anyway, you get the idea. Russian forces have given up on the north and south and are now focused on the east. In the east, the Russian army has essentially two options. Firstly, they could implement a deep pincer. That would involve them going north from Melitopol and south from Kharkiv via Dnipro, which, if successful, would give them control over not only Donbass, but also a number of other significant oblasts. Or they could go for a more shallow pincer movement, going down from Izium and up from Volnovakha, which would give them control over Donbass and some of the Kharkiv Oblast. Judging from their most recent movements though, it looks like the Russian army is going for the shallow pincer movement instead of the deeper one. Russian forces have started advancing south from Izium and trying to take control over two small towns in the west of Luhansk. If Russia can take these two towns, then it will probably use them as launch points for an offensive on Severodonetsk, a city of some 100,000 people. Now, everyone expected this second stage of the Russian invasion to proceed at a slower pace than the first few weeks, largely because of the Russian army's limited logistical abilities. As we've detailed in previous videos, the Russian army has struggled to supply its forces at long distances, which is part of the reason they've struggled in Kiev. And therefore, a slower advance would obviously give Russia's logistical operations more time to catch up with the front lines. Unfortunately for Putin though, while Russian forces made slow but steady progress in the first few days of this second phase of the invasion, over the last few days, they've apparently faltered. Now, we should say at this point that it's hard to find reliable information, but according to recent reports, they failed to take either of the towns I mentioned earlier, the ones they were aiming for, and a Ukrainian artillery strike on their control towers in Izium has put the brakes on an advance from Izium to Severodonetsk. Similarly, Ukrainian forces are still holding out in Mariupol, and the situation in Kherson has reached a stalemate. And only to compound the issues for Putin, Ukrainian forces have been staging successful counteroffensives in the east of Kharkiv, which the Russians had been using for supply and communication lines. Essentially, Russian supply lines to Izium run through this area, so if the Ukrainian forces can take it out, they'll be able to cut off about 22 Russian battalion tactical groups in Izium, which represent about 25% of Russia's total force in Ukraine. You get the idea though. Russia's advance has apparently stalled once again, and Ukraine has staged successful counteroffensives around Kharkiv, ultimately threatening Russian supply lines. So what happens next? Well, if things continue as is, then this war could go on for a long time. Neither side is making sufficient advances on the battlefield to force any concessions in negotiations, which means that a negotiated outcome looks unlikely, unless and until one side is able to get the clear upper hand. So, if Putin wants a quicker resolution to this war, and assuming the Russian army's fortunes don't suddenly improve, he'll have to do something drastic. Some analysts have therefore suggested that Putin could use Russia's Victory Day celebrations on May 9th to officially declare war on Ukraine and announce a general mobilization. For those who don't know, Victory Day is one of Russia's most important national holidays, commemorating the defeat of the Nazis in 1945. Last week, UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said that he expected to use the occasion to declare war and a full mobilisation against Ukraine, which would involve conscripting all Russian men of fighting age into the military and redirecting Russian industry towards the war effort. Russian state media has also apparently been preparing the Russian public for something like this. The country's state media has started framing the war as an essential battle not just against Ukraine, but the West and NATO more generally. And various outlets have started explicitly calling for some sort of escalation, whether that be nuclear strike or a mass mobilization. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, actually accused NATO of using Ukraine as a proxy against Russia. And Putin himself accused the West of, quote, terror campaigns against his country. Obviously, though, declaring a full mobilization against Ukraine carries political risks for Putin. While it might increase the chances of some sort of victory in Ukraine, if he lost an all-out war to the country, then it's hard to imagine his regime lasting much longer. More worryingly for the rest of the world, a full mobilization would massively increase the chances of World War III. Putin would probably frame the mobilization as a necessary response to NATO's support for Ukraine, and the political pressure for a direct intervention from NATO and the West would therefore only increase. As always, we should stress that this is only speculation at this point, but it is pretty scary stuff, and Russia's persistent military failures in Ukraine are continuing to increase the chances of World War III. Controversial content like this often doesn't do well with monetization or the YouTube algorithm, so I'd like to thank Brilliant for supporting this video. Brilliant is an online STEM learning platform that allows you to get smarter every day by learning huge important topics through engaging and interactive experiences. Gone are the long boring lectures that I sat through to get my computer science degree, instead replaced by puzzles and interactive experiences which teach you the knowledge you need to know in a way you actually want to learn. It really is all the knowledge you could need too, because Brilliant have courses from the very basics of computer science and maths right through to neural networks, quantum computing, and even quantitative finance to help you better understand financial markets. All of these courses are designed by award-winning instructors and built upon the principle of active learning, so you're gaining STEM knowledge by actually doing it. So if you want to improve with STEM, then you can sign up to Brilliant at brilliant.org/TLDREU. And the first 200 people to do so will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks for supporting the channel.